Hey, Facebook. Hey, YouTube. How are you doing today? Hopefully good, hopefully blessed, not downtrodden, discouraged, broke, busted, disgusted, but hope-filled because we are in the midst of the chaos code. So I want to show you some things because, like I said, I get on here and sometimes I take for granted all the things that I watch on a daily basis and things you may not know of what's going on right now. And so as predicted, I mean, we talked about this in the book, right? Like, let's see, I think it was page, oh boy, I think it was like page 98, but we talk about all of this. We talk about the Trump landslide victory on election night, the ballots stopped being counted, and then all of a sudden it turns into a Biden victory, and Associated Press and Fox News and all these people are going to claim it. So I don't really understand sometimes why people get discouraged, I guess, because the Associated Press is calling this for Donald Trump, or the Decision Desk is calling this for Joe Biden. Sorry, I see prophetically I say Donald Trump, but how they call it for Joe Biden. You know, this is a corrupt fake news media calling an election for a corrupt fake candidate. So why you would be surprised, I'm not really sure. I mean, after we've been through Russiagate, we've been through impeachment, we've been through the dossier, we've been through just so much of the fake news, just constantly pushing an agenda. Why would we be surprised that, oh, they're not fair when it comes to the elections and they're calling things before all the ballots are counted and da, 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 da. I'm like, of course they're going to do that. Of course they're going to do that. Why are you even surprised? So anyways, I just wanted to get on here. Just know that, you know, the Trump campaign, they put a statement out today. They said, you know, the election's not over. The fight's not over. I also see disinformation coming out. I mean, again, how many times do we see something like this? Like insider in the Trump such and such administration and the campaign is coming out and they're saying like, oh, he's just so, you know, he's worried he's going to lose. He's going to concede. I really don't think this man's going to concede, and I don't want him to concede. I think that, like I've been saying, he needs to know that we're standing with him. We need to start showing up, get off our butts and show up at these different polling locations and start to peacefully protest and pray for the exposure of fraud and pray for, you know, all of these election frauds and fake ballots and all of that would be found out. We need to pray that there be some Saul to Paul moments that people in the midst of it turn around and go, this is wrong. This is wrong. Like, I'm not even, you know, a Republican, but this is wrong. And this isn't what democracy is. And this is what our republic is founded on. And so we have to fight to keep our republic. And so I want to talk to you a little bit just about information warfare. And I really, you know, I didn't necessarily understand at the time why this book was so delayed in coming out, but we're living the chaos. And so there's a couple of places I want to highlight that I think you guys should be reading so you know what's going on. And so we have a whole chapter in here. Chapter 6 is all about the battle for sheep nations. And so if you read it, you know, Lance makes the case that there are nations who are going to uphold religious liberty, morality, freedom, which we call sheep nations, and then there's goat nations who are looking to strip liberties away and your freedoms away, and they're going to molest and malign the people of God. And that's Jewish people, that's Christian people, that's even Muslim people. I mean, look at China. Christians and Muslims are both in concentration camps right now, being reprogrammed. So government is God in a lot of these places. And that's what a goat nation wants to become. And so if you read through it, the first part here, it talks a lot about how nations are won. And so historically, you know, we pull from Rick Joyner's, he had a blog post through military power, through religious power, political power, and economic power. But there's one part that I wanted to highlight and I wanted to show to you. Let me see if I'm advanced enough to do my screen share. Oh, yeah, we want that one. That's the one we want. Okay, so read that with me. So see that part I highlighted there? You could read Rick's part, but this is the line I want you to understand. Understand what Rick is saying here. The war for nations is no longer one-dimensional, waged through hand-to-hand combat and ground invasions. Today's war for nations is waged through economic power, fought through on 3 fronts: information, technology, and economics. And so economics, that one is, a lot of times I think it's easier for us to grasp because we're, I think, more involved with things like money. And you look at the national debt. A lot of people are informed on the national debt. But when we talk about technology and the things that we're seeing on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and the censoring that's going on right now, I think that's really, it's very scary for a lot of people, for people who haven't been awake up until this point. It's like, well, why is that being censored? Well, why can't I say that on here? And the reality is, it's a business, just like anything else. You could refuse service, you could do what you want, and it's not an application that's all for free speech, and it can censor. And so that's very scary. So you need to make sure you're on platforms like Parler and a couple other news sites. I know populist.press, that just came out. That's like a new Drudge. That's actual news and not partisan, because I think Drudge sold years ago, and it's like every other news site. Even Fox News. I mean, Fox News they called Arizona early on, and here we are still counting ballots over in Arizona. And really, in so many ways, this information warfare is disinformation. And the thing that I think we all need to tune into is really what's coming, that as this legal ballot fight keeps going, the news has already set up that Joe Biden is the winner. You have a lot of low information voters, low information people, even conservatives who have agreed with that and have said, well, if that's what's happening, that's what's happening. Okay. And it's going to be super, super hard mentally, not just for it to look like, oh, Trump's fighting this in court, but it is going to look like exactly what they've done. This is, in my opinion, so like the devil. It's like he accuses you of the thing he's doing. And so people will think Donald Trump is stealing the election, when all along we've said, no, we need to count the ballots. We need to make sure all the ballots have been counted because the margins are so thin, and we need to make sure there's no voter fraud. So as things begin to shift and turn, that militant arm of the progressive left is really going to manifest. And in people that, like I said, are really just low information. They don't understand that there's actual voter fraud happening all over the place. And we've been saying this for months. There's a lot of people who've been saying this for months. The president has been saying this for months, that the lax voter rules in a lot of these states, and believe me, I believe has been done on purpose, is causing the chaos that we're in now. And so I do think that in the future, as we start winning different court cases and battles, the tone is really gonna dramatically shift from the militant progressive left. And so I want to talk a little bit about other things you may not be aware of. And so one of the things we also talk about in the book on page 150, you can see, and I'll pull it up. I'll try to pull it up. Let's get advanced here with the technology. I'm a millennial after all. I should be able to get to page 150 fairly quickly. Let's see, 150. All right, perfect. So this is really what happened last time. I want you to understand that what's happening, because I see a lot of people that are like, well, why would the left wait till now? You don't think they would have gotten rid of Donald Trump and all these congressmen or senators, the last election? You don't think they would have done that? And the reality is, I don't think they did that, because I don't think they knew it was coming. I don't think they realized that a remnant was about to show up in 2016. And so we write about this here on page 150. We write about, leading into the election, an uneasy sense fell upon these undecided 22 million voters. So these are our Christian sage cons, spiritually active, governmentally engaged conservatives, right? That's you, that's me, it's 22 million of us. And so there's a book that was written by George Barnett, says The Day Christians Changed America, that analyzed the election results this way. 24 hours before the election, undecided Christians were praying. For them, it was the roll of the dice. They had no idea what kind of President Trump would be. He may be crazy, but their only other choice was Hillary, and she was just plain old wicked. Crazy or wicked, which way would they go? They didn't know that what Trump would do. He could possibly make things worse, but they knew Hillary would lead America further down a path of unrighteousness and destruction. Here's the amazing thing. Many entered that voting booth not sure what to do, but they wanted change. Out of 138 million votes, this one group flipped the vote. That's the power of a remnant. To appreciate the power of a remnant, take a look at these graphs. So I want to show you these graphs, all right? To understand what we're talking about, I find it quite prophetic that we pulled these three and put them in the book, because this is where we're looking now. But Pennsylvania was won by Trump by 38,000 votes, or I'm sorry, 68,000 votes. And then Wisconsin was won by 27,000 votes. And then what we have here in Michigan was won by only 13,000 votes. And so that is a margin that is just razor thin, right? That could be one county, one area. And I went through and I actually did this other thing. Let me see if I can do this. Let me stop the share. I'm going to screen share application window. And I want to show you this data too, because this is, let's see. You know what? Let me see here. Because I just did this the other day. I pulled them off a New York Post, and I pulled the different states, and then I organized them. I'm a data person, if you can't tell. I organized them by the percentage of voters. The difference. So you could see here's Trump, how many Trump votes he got in Michigan, according, I believe it was the New York Post. I could go find it, put it up here. Hillary got 2,268,839. That's a different, oh wait, then this was the Green Party. Here, I didn't put green in there. Green Party, if I could spell green, Green Party. And then, so that's a difference between Trump and Hillary of 10,000 votes. So when you add all three of these together, and we want to see what's that percentage, what was the percentage of voters that really made the shift in that state? It's 0.02. And so, you know what, I'm just noticing here, this is a little different than what I had in the book. But like I said, I pulled this off of the New York Times, New York Post the other day, that had all these state by state. So it's still, the point is, it's 10 or 13,000 votes. That's not a lot of votes. And so I want to show you something because I thought this was very interesting. So I organized them all by this percentage shift. Okay, so how many votes really shifted it? And what I thought was interesting is everything in orange right here are the states that currently paused counting on election night. And then the blue are states that they won. I think they counted on winning, even though look how marginal back in 2016 New Hampshire was. So that was interesting. And then Florida, they called early for Trump. And so, but this is what, you know, he won it by in 2016. So I think that this is very interesting to me. Like if I was the left, this is the point that I'm trying to make with this, that if I was the left, and I didn't plan on the remnant showing up in 2016, what would I do this time? What would I do differently this time? Well, I might take a look at those states right there that's under 0.05 margin and know that these states are going to be so close. I need to first see what's the remnant going to do? What's God going to do? And then I know the difference that I have to make up. And so I think it's pretty clear cut that if I was the left and I didn't plan on the remnant showing up, that's what I would be doing. So I want to throw that out there because I think that's important information for you to know. And I want you to not be discouraged because of the information warfare that's happening right now. We need to stand and we need to say, listen, I want every valid ballot counted. Every valid ballot counted. But it is super suspicious on election night when you stop at 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern, and everybody just goes home. And then magically ballots start showing up after you've counted the remnant, after we know how many we're going to need to beat what God's trying to do. And I believe God is doing and is trying to do. And I do not think he's going to be robbed. I think that if we get into this, like I said, we're going to start finding a lot of ballots that shouldn't be there. We're going to find a lot of anomalies. And like I said, I'm praying for some Saul to Paul moments. I'm praying for people who are in the midst of it that go, I did this, but this is wrong. This is really wrong. And we need to stand up and say something. So I want you to be praying for that, agreeing for that. The other thing I want to end with is, page 110 in the book. I'm trying to go through and find things that I think are applicable to what's happening now. And there's a lot in here too of, honestly, of what's at stake, because what you guys don't understand is not Republican versus Democrat. Where we're at right now is globalist elite and globalist corporations against sovereign nations. That's what we're battling for. And how America goes, so goes the world. You don't realize how many people around the world are watching this election because it will directly affect their nation. And how globalist corporations and globalist elite are going to deal with it. And I really encourage you, if you haven't read it yet, I really think, the two chapters you should read are really chapter 6, which is the battle for sheep nations. So you understand how the war is fought right now for nations. And then the other one is the new religion, which is chapter 7, because that is what we're up against. It's an ideology. It's not a political belief. It's actually an ideology that has very similar characteristics of a religion. It's got its own sin. It's got its own way to salvation. It's got its own awakening process. It's got its own punishment, all of it. So things that you would see in any religion, the progressive militant left have that. And so that's an important chapter to read so you know what you're up against. Okay, so anyways, let me find my last bit here. And because I'm seeing a lot of comments come through from people that are saying, oh, don't go protest, pray, da da da. And I'm like, yeah, of course, let's pray, but let's also show up. We have to show up. And so there's a section here on page 110, and let's see, I'll put my millennial skills to the test again. Let's go to 110. All right, so yes, respect these sovereign nations. So we talk about the battle for sheep nations. And so with all that said, why do we fight in the economic war happening around us? Christians are, by and large, a submissive and accommodating group. However, there is a point where governments and corporations can go too far and force Christians to transgress their conscience. It's at this point we tread into an uncharted territory of civil disobedience. Like the first century church, when disciples were arrested for preaching, Peter and John said, whether it's right in the sight of God to listen to you rather than God, we must judge. For we cannot speak, but what we have seen and heard. When the apostles were brought to trial a second time, the Sanhedrin told them, we gave you strict orders not to teach in this name, yet you have filled Jerusalem with your preaching and are determined to make us responsible for the man, Jesus' blood. But Peter and the other apostles replied, we must obey God rather than men. Notice the principle. Jesus taught the disciples to render to Caesar what is Caesar and God's what is God's. They understood that the government has a sphere. These men were willing to die and would die rather than disobey God's call to preach. This point of contention between government and religion comes down to conflicting spheres of jurisdiction. It answers the question, who has the ultimate authority? There are 5 clear spheres of sovereignty designed by God where Christ and heaven's ordinances, principles, and designs are intended to operate independent of outside control. Personal, church, family, government, business, and voluntary associations. God's word lays out principles that help each person understand his or her authority, responsibility, and accountability to God. These are individual gardens where God walks in the cool of the day to commune with his people, and they cultivate what is in their hand. Parents, for instance, are to rule their household and provide for and raise their children. Managers should be diligent in business and generous in wages. Church leaders are to feed and nurture the church, being accountable to God for the flock. In each realm has design and boundaries. The 10 Commandments warn of coveting or desiring to take another man's property. There are boundaries to behavior. These boundaries are sacred to God, and the overreach of one domain into another produces hardship, confusion, and often destruction. There is a time in which one man's rules over another to his own hurt. Who has the ultimate authority to rule your family, teach your children, shut down your business, or tell you what kind of work you can or cannot do? The realm of government has a place, and man has an obligation to respect the government, but the realm of conscience and obedience to God is a higher obligation. And so, I didn't share on the screen. We have to go see it you have to get in the book. I've been reading it out loud to you with the numbers on the screen. But my point is, hopefully that has gripped you, because it is exactly the type of attitude that we need to be having as Christians, is that we should not, the lovers always want to love and the warriors always want to fight, but it is a time for warriors to move forward in love, in truth, be praying for the election, be praying for other people, be praying that this is exposed, that corruption is exposed. And it's a time for lovers to realize that your family is at risk, your children are at risk, the legacy of America is at risk, the republic as we know it is at risk. And if you love the future that you could have for your children, you have to show up right now. You have to engage. You have to be seen and be heard, because you are up against something you've never been up against before. And it's disinformation directed at you. And it's an information and technology warfare right now. And so I want to encourage you, don't be discouraged. Like I said, as long as this president is going to stand up and fight legally, I will stand with him and I'll stand behind him, because he knows what's at stake. And I believe many of you know what's at stake. So I want you to share this broadcast, because like I said, a lot of people don't understand what's happening. I want to encourage you to get the God's Chaos Code, because like I just read from it, multiple things in there that are so applicable to what's happening today. Please read. Like I said, I think it's going to be chapter 6. Just skip the first couple ones. I know that's the code, but for now, read chapters, The Battle for Sheep Nations, which is, I think, 6 and 7. And then there's one more, too, you should really read. All right, we're going to skip The Storm is Here. We want The Day Christians Changed America, chapter 9. So I would tell you to read 6, 7, and 9. That's super applicable to what's going on right now. Then circle back and read the code. And you'll have a lot of answers you don't have now. Please be tuning in to actual news. So Real America's Voice is fantastic. Populist.press, please go read that. Be encouraged, be exhorted. Stop plugging into fake news. Know that the battle is still being fought, and we're going to go the legal route. And please be prepared that when things begin to shift and to turn, know that the militant left is really going to have problems with it. And so anyways, want to bless you all. Hope you enjoyed the broadcast, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.